Hi, I'm Heather. Welcome to class. Today we're going to do some postures that will help strengthen our extensor muscles, including spinal muscles, buttocks and hamstrings. Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. We're going to start with a chair at one end of your mat. That's all you'll need. And we'll lie down with enough room to have the legs straight with the heels on the seat of the chair and the arms overhead. So I might push my chair just a little further towards the wall. So the heels are on the front of the chair and then we're lying back. Now we can start with the arms by the sides of the body, but perhaps eventually we'll take the arms overhead. So make sure you're able to recline, legs straight. We catch the outer edges of the mat with the hands, and in order to help us get a sense of activating the hamstrings quite significantly, we're going to bend the knees, dig the heels into the mat, and then lift the hips up. So with the knees slightly bent, as you lift the hips up, you'll feel the hamstrings start to engage. So lift the hips higher, 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 and then straighten the legs without turning the legs out. So the feet can be hip-width apart. You roll the inner thighs down to stop the legs from rolling out. And let's come back down to the floor, have a moment of rest, and we'll go again. We'll use the breath to come into the pose. Slight bend of the knees. Keep the toes pointing up towards the ceiling. That is, you're not letting the legs roll out. Inhale. As you dig the heels into the chair, exhale. Lift the hips up. Keep lifting the hips as you work to straighten the knees. So as you straighten the knees, there's the sense of the femur bones, the thigh bones feeding into the pelvis and the pelvis tilting or tailbone tilting in the direction of the heels. And then come back down. Have a breath or two. Then if you feel that you can take the arms overhead and do the same practice, try that. Now, you may not have room to take the arms all the way straight. You can perhaps hold on to the elbows. That's fine. Otherwise, the hands can be shoulder width apart. Let's again start with the knees slightly bent. Inhale. As you exhale, dig the heels into the chair. Lift your hips up. Keep the knees bent just for a breath or two so that you can really feel those hamstrings engage. Then tilt your tailbone up towards the knees as you straighten the knees and roll the inner thighs down and come back down and relax. And we'll do one repetition starting with the knees straight. So we keep the knees straight but engage the grip of the kneecaps, quadriceps switched on. Again, stretch the arms overhead. If it's too strong for you with your arms overhead, then you can come back with hands by the sides of the body. Legs are straight. Roll the inner thighs down. Inhale. Exhale. Lift the hips up. Draw the tailbone towards your heels so that you're not collapsing in the lower back, so to speak. If the arms are overhead, straighten the elbows. And come back down and rest the feet on the floor so you can relax the hamstrings. You can take your feet as wide as the mat, let the knees roll in towards each other and relax the arms out to the sides. Then you can roll over, come to sit up. Now, of course, you can keep repeating with your heels on the chair, and I'd suggest perhaps that's an easier variation than what we're progressing to. So if that's already a challenge, stay with that. But if you want to progress and challenge yourself a little more, we're going to put the chair aside. We'll bring a bolster and 2 bricks onto our mat. We have the bolster running the length of the mat, and you can have a blanket for your head. Let's have our bricks set up blade shape, so this height, and they'll go across the width of the mat. They can be a little bit apart. We're going to use them for our heels, so you'll need them your legs length away from you, so that when you lie back over the bolster, Your legs can be straight with your heels on your bricks. The feet can be hip width apart, legs hip width apart, and again we just want to watch that we're not letting the legs roll out to the side. So inner thighs roll down, toes point up towards the ceiling, and you set your head and neck comfortably on your support there. The hands can catch the outer edges of the mat, and so we get this sense of trying to pull the mat towards the feet, and we're going to again work to lift the hips up off the floor. So let's bend the knees. We start with the knees bent and then we work with them straightening once we've lifted the hips. Inhale. As you exhale, dig the heels into the bricks. Lift your hips and tilt your tailbone towards the heels as you straighten the knees. Draw the front pelvic bones up towards your lower ribs. And then come back down. Hips down to the floor. And we go again. Inner thighs roll down. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale. Dig the heels into your bricks as you exhale. Lift your hips. Tilt your tailbone towards your knees as you work towards straightening the knees. You feel the grip of the hamstrings. The hamstring muscles must contract as you lift the hips in this position. Tailbone towards the heels and come back down. Now, we'll keep the arms down while we try lifting with the legs straight. So legs are staying straight. Inhale. Exhale. Lift your hips up. Draw your tailbone to the heels. And back down again. Let's do a few repetitions like that on the breath. Inhale. Exhale. Lift the hips. You dig the heels down into the bricks. Inhale, back down. Exhale. Lift the hips. Inhale, back down. One more. Exhale. Lift the hips. And back down again. And we'll try, after we've had a rest, we'll try with the arms overhead. So now, whether you like the idea of holding the end of the bolster with your hands or catching the elbows, I'll leave that up to you. But again, we start with the knees bent. So with the knees bent, press the heels firmly into your bricks. Inhale. Exhale. Lift the hips. Keep lifting, keep lifting, keep lifting, and tilt the tailbone towards the heels as you work to straighten the legs. And go on lifting the buttocks up. And then come back down again. Once more with the knees bent. Press the heels. Inhale. Exhale. Lift your hips. Then work to straighten the knees. Roll the inner thighs down. And come back down again. Swap the cross of the forearms if you're holding your elbows. And if it feels just perhaps a bit too strong with the arms overhead, you can keep the arms by the sides of the body and hold the outer edges of your mat. Let's try with the legs straight. Dig the heels down. Inhale. Exhale. Lift up and stay. Breathe. But can you tilt your tailbone towards the heels as you move the front pelvic bones more towards your ribs? Then come down. Take a breath or two. And we do one more like that. Inhale. Exhale. Lift up. So the legs are straight, the inner thighs are rolling down, the inner feet are pressing away from the groins. The outer feet are peeling back towards the outer hips. The tailbone is moving towards the heels. And back down again. Then rest the arms by the sides of the body. Bend the knees, put your feet on the floor and let the knees rest in against each other so that the legs can relax. When you're ready, you can sit up, and we're going to do the same practice but now without the bolster underneath the back. If you like the idea of challenging yourself more with this, then we can do with the legs together. Now, doing it without the bolster under the back may be more challenging in and of itself, even if you keep the feet hip width apart. But if it is really challenging, you could build up your height just a little bit more. You see I've got a flat brick here and then a blade-shaped brick on top. So if you want to start with the legs together, and perhaps we start with this height, then we can eliminate that lower brick to challenge ourselves just that little bit more. But again, we want room so that we can lie with the heels on the bricks and the legs straight. So always working with that positioning first, even if we're coming into the pose with the knees bent. So we can catch the outer edges of the mat with the hands, bend the knees slightly, press the heels into your bricks, inhale, exhale, lift your hips up. The chest will lift and move towards the chin, and watch your inner feet don't shrink back towards the groins. Press the inner feet away from the groins and come back down. Now if it's helpful, try drawing your shoulder blades under towards your hips a little bit more. So already you feel like the chest is lifted. The back may already feel a bit arched, but when you lift up, we're trying to take that arch out of the back. Bend the knees, inhale, exhale. Lift the hips, still with the knees bent initially. Feel the contraction of the hamstrings, then work to straighten the knees. Yes, you move the sternum towards the chin, but you're also directing tailbone towards the heels. Can you keep pressing the inner feet away from the groins and come back down again? Now, if you like the idea of challenging yourself even more, then eliminate that bottom brick so you've just got the blade-shaped brick. And if you feel to, you can take your arms up and overhead. Draw your shoulder blades down the back towards your hips, and we'll start with the knees bent. Inhale, exhale, press the heels into the brick, lift your hips up, direct your tailbone towards your heels, roll the inner thighs down as you press the inner feet away from the groins and come back down. So you may feel this more strongly in the spinal muscles when we have less of a height underneath the feet. If it's too much with your arms overhead, then bring them back by the sides of the body. Let's do one more like this. Knees bent, inhale, exhale. Dig the heels into your brick, lift your hips up, direct your tailbone to your heels. And back down again. Relax there just for a breath or two. We'll do 2 more repetitions, this time starting with the legs straight. So as I said, if it's too strong with your arms overhead, you can have the arms by the sides of the body. You could also try doing with the grip of the elbows, or holding the elbows with the elbows bent. So the legs are straight, roll the inner thighs down, and peel the outer feet back towards the outer hips. Inhale. Exhale. Lift up the hips. Stay there for a breath or two. And come down. And we'll do one more. So again, make sure the outer feet are peeling back towards the outer hips as the inner feet press away from the groins. Inhale. Exhale. You lift up. Direct the tailbone towards your heels. And come back down. And then relax. You can have the feet as wide as your mat. Let the knees rest against each other. Set the arms out to the sides of the body. Turn your palms up. And feel the spinal muscles soften here. Then you can roll over and come to sit. Now there is another practice that we can do, particularly working with the strength of the hamstring muscles, and it depends on your floor surface as to what direction you take. If you've got tiles or floorboards, a slippery type of floor, you could put socks on so that your feet can slip on the floor, or a blanket underneath each foot. But if you've got carpet like I have, then you need something that's going to slide on the carpet that you can put your feet on. I've got a couple of paper plates that I'm going to use for my heels. You'll note I've moved my mat. I just need a little bit of extra room there between the end of my mat and the walls so that I can slide my heels on the floor. I've got my paper plates here for my heels to dig into as I'm working to stretch one leg out, other leg out. When we're in Setu Bandha, the bridge pose, or sometimes referred to as Supta Padangusthasana, although we're certainly not catching the ankles for this. So when we lie down, you want to have your heels on your plates if you're using something like this. And we're going to specifically work on the heels, not on the whole of the flat foot. So be aware of that we're not pushing the whole foot down. As we work with the heels, this is going to help us to activate the strength of those hamstring muscles. So we lie down and come in close so the buttocks are in reasonably close to the feet. You can hold the outer edges of the mat there. So as we normally would for Setu Bandha or Supta Padangusthasana, we lift the hips up, but we're not necessarily working to roll the shoulders under and elevate the lift of the chest. So our main focus is what we're doing in the legs here. Inhale, exhale, dig the heels down, lift your hips up. The chest will lift towards your chin. Then slide the right heel away from you. Don't go to straighten the leg completely. Just a little way towards straight, but keep the right side of the pelvis the same level as the left, and then slide the heel back on the floor so the heel comes back to where it was. Slide the left heel away from you, again perhaps just halfway towards being straight, but don't lower the left side of the pelvis, and then slide that heel back in towards you. Let's repeat. Keep the pelvis up, both sides of the pelvis the same height. Slide the right heel away from you, press the inner feet away from the inner knees, slide the right heel back in. Slide the left heel away from you. Keep the pelvis the same level. Slide that heel back in. Come down. Have a rest. Feel free to put the toes on the floor, balls of the feet on the floor. And we'll go again and see if we can slide the feet out just a little bit further. So again, you're holding the outer edges of the mat. Lift the toes, the balls of the feet up off the floor, so you're just on the heels. Inhale. Exhale, lift up your hips. Slide the right heel away from you. Work more towards a straight position, but try not to lower the right side of the pelvis. Then slide the heel back in, and then left leg, slide that left heel away from you, working more towards a straight position, but don't drop the left side of the pelvis. Then slide back in, and once more come back down. Rest. The feet can rest flat on the floor. Now, the next challenge would be, can we work with the legs moving together? So both heels sliding away and then coming back in. That is more of a challenge. Inhale. Let's peel the toes up, balls of the feet up. Exhale. Lift your hips. Then slide the heels away just a little bit. Don't go too far. And slide them back in again without lowering the hips. Let's go again. Slide the heels out just a little bit. Try to keep your hips up as you slide the heels back in. Good. One more time. Slide the heels out. Try not to lower the hips. See if you can go a little further and slide the heels back in, and then come down and have a rest. Relax the arms and the legs. Let's do one more little cycle we'll do 3 repetitions of that before we finish up. So again, catch the outer edges of the mat. Peel the toes, the balls of the feet up. Knees and feet hip width apart. Inhale. Exhale. You dig the heels down as you lift the hips up. Then slowly slide the heels out. You don't have to go terribly far for the first rep. Keep your hips up though, and then slide the heels back in again. Once more, slide the heels out. Perhaps you go a little further out. Slide the heels back in again. Lift those hips up. Last one. Slide the heels out. A little further if you can, and then slide back in and come back down and rest. Relax the arms, relax the legs. So the tendency is when we slide the heels back in, the pelvis will drop, and that's something that we can work on, trying to keep the pelvis lifted when we slide those heels back in. Then roll over to the right side, come to sit up. Now, having done a lot of work on strengthening, contracting the hamstrings, it's quite likely we will feel a little bit stiff there. So let's do Supta Padangusthasana number 1 to help release those hamstrings. So as we're on our mat, you're welcome to use a belt around your foot. Let's keep the left leg bent, take the right leg up, and if you can, you catch the big toe with your fingers. But then we, of course, want to get the head back down and get that shoulder tip back down towards the floor. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling really stiff in my hamstrings because I've done a lot of contractive work. But as we keep that left leg bent, it's also going to help us to release the spinal muscles, which also have been contracting in the poses we've been doing today. Just a few breaths here. Right leg straight. And as I said, you can use a belt around the ball of the foot if it's difficult to reach the big toe. Let's swap legs. Left leg, whether you catch your big toe, you see I've got my 2 forefingers between the big toe and the second toe, and the thumb comes around the inner edge of the big toe. And this right leg staying bent. And my intention is to iron out the back of the knee, open, lengthen, broaden the hamstrings there on the back of the left thigh. And I'm intending to get this left shoulder tip down towards the floor and keep my neck neutral. And then you can release that left leg and again rest. If you like my classes, feel free to join me in my video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. There are over 370 classes, and I'm adding new classes every week, and each class has a different focus. They're full-length classes. They are longer than the classes here on YouTube. I'll put the link for my video library in the description box below. You can start with a 7-day free trial. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me. For more in-depth teaching, check out the video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. The link is in the description box below.